Welcome to the Bike Life podcast by Warmshowers Foundation, where we will be sharing knowledge, experience, tools, and stories of touring cyclists and hosts from around the world. I'm Tara Lee, the woman behind the scenes at Warmshowers Foundation, the leading platform for cyclists looking for hosts and to connect with a passionate international community. Find out more by visiting us at Warmshowers.org. Now, on to the show.
Hey everyone, this is Jerry Kopak, the host of Bike Life, coming to you from the Rocky Mountains of Breckenridge, Colorado. Today's guest recently completed the Pacific Coast Bike Tour, riding solo from Vancouver to San Diego, a distance of over 1,800 miles. Kat Lau is a second-generation Chinese-Canadian who has navigated the challenges of cultural expectations, but through cycling, she has found empowerment, independence, and resilience. Kat, welcome to Bike Life.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm just going to jump right in. What inspired you to take on the Pacific Coast Bike Tour, and how did you prepare?
Oh gosh, yeah, I've been trying to think about how to answer this question. There have been so many factors, I think, that have really inspired me to do the Pacific Coast route. I think first and foremost, I've been looking for a route to challenge me. But I wanted a route that was well mapped and, with resources nearby. And I thought, I was doing some research and the Pacific Coast route seemed to be a perfect fit. I also wanted to work at the same time. So I needed cafes, I needed internet connection in certain places. So I felt like, okay, this is a sizable distance and just a good route to try it out. And I did my first solo tour. It was a very small kind of 300-kilometer ride out east, the Cabot Trail in Cape Breton in Nova Scotia. And that was my first experiment to see if I could do this on my own. And I did it. And I was like, okay, what's the next challenge? So the Pacific Coast is just, I was like, let's do that one and see how it goes.
So do you live in Western Canada then? Is that why it made sense? You don't?
No, I don't, but I love the coast. So okay. I live in Montreal, Quebec.
So nowhere near Vancouver then? Nowhere
near Vancouver.
Okay.
But I did my grad school in Newfoundland, so the furthest east province in Canada. And that's where kind of like cycle touring kind of started for me. So I've been used to like the hills, the rugged terrain. And so there's something about the coasts that just draw me.
I get it. So that's interesting to me. How long were you on the road for?
2.5 months. So from mid-August to the end of October.
Okay. Yeah. And that's pretty good weather for that part of the world, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It was warm leaving Vancouver and it was like pretty mild temperatures. And once I got down south, it was lovely.
Now you mentioned that you wanted to work. What do you do for a living?
I'm a visual science communicator, so I help researchers make their data more accessible through design and illustration. And so a lot of that I can do remotely, which is really spectacular.
A science communicator. I actually had to look that up before we started talking today. So
cool.
I wanted to hear it from you directly. So thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so you would cycle for, I don't know, half a day and then log back in, get on the computer?
Well, I freelance. And so a lot of what I do is project based. And so I just had to make sure I hit deadlines. So some days it would just be, I would be on the road and just focus on riding. And then I would just plan ahead. If I knew I had a meeting, I needed to make sure I had internet connection. Yeah. And sometimes I was working from my tent. Like sometimes I didn't need internet connection. I just had the programs that I needed on my computer. So I was working the tent, working at the campsite.
Nice. So you were camping then?
I was, yeah, for the most part, if I could. Yeah.
Okay. Any warm shower stays along the way?
I did, yeah. Definitely a handful of them, which was always lovely. It's always lovely to have food and showers.
Food and showers, always a nice thing at the end of a long ride, for sure.
Yeah.
If you don't mind, I wanna pivot for a second and talk about your heritage and upbringing. So you're a second generation Chinese Canadian. How did this cultural expectations with your upbringing shape your approach to risk-taking and adventure? And how has cycling helped you redefine those boundaries?
Yeah. So being a second generation immigrant, I think like you're straddling like these two identities of trying to fit in into the cultural norms in North America, and then also trying to figure out, how you fit in with your own roots and ancestry. And growing up, the household I was living in was very restrictive, especially around gender norms of what girls could and couldn't do. And so, I have this not so great relationship with my mother, unfortunately, about, how I should dress, what kind of job I should have, whether I should do sports or not. And so that was always a clash at home. And so that really kind of spread this self-doubt of whether like, oh, should I be doing these sports? Should I be even planning these wild adventures? Because for them, it was like too risk-taking, and they were overprotecting, I think, from their own experiences as immigrants. They were in total survival mode. It was trying to, overcome the language barrier here and try to make ends meet. And so I can understand that. And so they really protected their kids. But in doing that, I think they unfortunately hindered some of our growth as well. And so I was actively trying to push against that for more opportunities of growth for me. And so cycling was just a great channel for that. And I just found so much liberty and self-reliance through that. And it's very empowering indeed.
What path did your mom want you to have?
I think she wanted me to have a stable job. She wanted me to get married, have kids, and buy a house. It's like the kind of standard conventional pathway. And I think that made a lot of sense. For her, it did. But I think she just didn't really see eye to eye with me in terms of what I wanted. And I think that's the biggest conflict we have, is like there isn't a respect in what I want to do. Like my job is quite unconventional, and the adventures I do are quite, wild and crazy in her eyes. So she's just always constantly worried about, my safety or just my financial stability in life. And so I think that's all warranted, but it is quite, it's always a conflict at home.
Yeah, it sounds like she genuinely wants the best for you, just maybe sees your path in a different light than maybe what you've chosen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Were you always kind of a rebellious kid then, or was this something like once you got older, like, okay, now I'm going to really push the limits here?
I think I was always a bit of a rebellious kid. I like asking questions. I was always curious about the world. I loved the natural environment. So I was the kid who was always asking questions, and my mom was just like, trying to like get away, and she didn't have the answers. And so unfortunately, a lot of times it was like, she was guilting me or shaming me to try to like, adjust my behavior so it would fall in line more with, what she had wanted. And instead it did the opposite. So I just rebelled more, and I wanted, more opportunities for myself. And I'm pretty happy I did that. So no regrets there.
What does she think about the Pacific Coast ride that you did?
So this is funny. I actually lied to my parents, but now they know. I didn't tell them I was biking the Pacific Coast.
Oh.
I told them that I was just out in the US on the West Coast traveling, and I only told them after I had done it. And that was I had done that because of a bad experience prior. When I went out east, and I told my mom, she had really said some hurtful things to me and was really trying to discourage me. And so I took that as kind of like, okay, I'm going to trust myself in the sense that I've done the research and I understand what I'm doing. And this is where like, overcoming that self-doubt, because when you get enough, I think, no's and just discouragement from especially, I think, your family, you really question whether it's the right thing to do, right? Am I the one who's wrong here? So it really takes some reflection to really think about, yeah, if you want to go out and do something like that.
Well, now that you've completed it and now that she knows what you did, what's her response been?
When I told her afterwards, I think she was shocked. My dad he had a much better response. He was really happy for me and was like, he couldn't believe I had done it. So that was really lovely to hear from my dad. I think my mom was still kind of like unsure of how to feel. She was like, well, that was still like really dangerous. But I think she's getting over, the all the adventures that I'm doing. And I think she's a bit more respectful now, but maybe not quite as much as I want her to be.
Well, it sounds like she's getting there, right? She knows that
Yeah,
it's making you happy and you're smart, you're being safe about things, so she's starting to trust you a bit more, it sounds like.
yeah.
You had mentioned before that you felt like an outsider at times in a cycling community. Were there moments when you found unexpected allies or a sense of belonging on the road?
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the moments I remember was finding a group of cyclists in Monterey. And so Highway 1 after Big Sur was closed for us, unfortunately. And
Oh,
so we had to reroute and go through the valley. And it had just also happened to be like one of the hottest days in October,
oh,
which was really unexpected. And it was like, I don't know in Fahrenheit, but it was like 40 degrees, like Celsius. It was like really hot.
it's like
Um,
120, it's like 120.
okay, yeah,
It's
like
crazy.
I had never experienced, like, you should not be biking or even being outside in that temperature. But I had to actually meet a friend in LA. And so I was on a bit of a deadline. So I was like, I have to make this distance work. And so I had met these cyclists in Monterey that were all going kind of the same direction. And so we were like, well, let's meet in King City. We knew there was like a campsite there, but it was very like costly. It was like $50 for like one person or something like that. But like
Oh,
we could pool if we all met, we could kind of divvy it up. And there is something about, I think, when you're all going through the same struggle of like the heat
yeah.
and and just rooting each other on and just cheer and being each other's cheerleaders. Like we didn't ride together. We all like met at the same place though. And so we just celebrated after that. And that was just such a great moment of like, you understand what I had to go through today, and I understand what you had to go through today. And that was just a moment of lovely, I think, connection. And we continued to ride kind of on and off afterwards that. So yeah, it was
So
really lovely.
so you said you started to ride kind of on and off with them. Does that mean you would kind of ride someplace, maybe meet up along the way and then kind of go at your own pace?
Yeah, so we played this kind of like tag of like, I'd pass you, you'd pass me. Oh, this person again. It was fun seeing some familiar faces on the road.
Yeah. Yeah, that level of camaraderie that cycling brings together is such a powerful aspect. And
Absolutely.
you're Canadian, so I'm guessing you don't get 40-degree temperatures that often where you live, correct?
No, I mean Montreal can get pretty warm, but I had not experienced that level of heat before where I was going downhill and the heat was hurting my face. Like I
It's
didn't
like a
know if I
hair
was gonna
dryer,
make
right?
it. Yeah, it was just, oh, it was so painful. I never experienced anything like that before.
Um, it reminds me of a story, that experience I had when I was in Chiang Mai, Thailand, a number of years ago,
Mhm.
and also really, really hot, probably 35, 40 degrees. And I live in the mountains in Colorado, so it never gets anywhere near that temperature. So I'm not accustomed to that. And I would ride from like 6 in the morning until like 10 in the morning, and then I would just be shut down because it just would get too hot. And I remember stopping at a cafe to fill up my water bottle, and I leaned my bike against the wall on the outside of the cafe, and I was in there for maybe a half hour just enjoying the air conditioning. And I came back, and I'm not kidding, the grips on my handlebars had melted, like the rubber had just
Oh
liquefied.
no.
I was like, wow, what? okay, I guess I'm just gonna sit this one out for a couple of hours until the sun goes down. So
Oh,
my point
wow.
is, I feel you when it comes to heat like that. But you're tougher than I am because you pushed through. I didn't. So I think I put out a thumb and I hitched a ride in the back of someone's pickup truck and found a hotel because I cracked.
I had to rest in like under a tree for like at least 20 to 30 minutes because it was so hot. And I definitely thought about like, okay, what are my options here if I don't, get to my destination? But thankfully, once it got later in the day, it started to cool off a little bit and I was able to make more progress.
Yikes. Um, I want to go back to your application. And in your
Mhm.
application, you wrote that this was a healing journey for you. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think I talked a little bit about that through,
Yeah.
growing up and having a family that wasn't supportive of what I was doing. And so I think a lot of these cycling tours for a lot of cyclists are healing journeys without like maybe it's not intentional, but it like indirectly becomes such a good opportunity to learn more about yourself. And for me, it was, finding that confidence in, I think, riding and just being able to push those distances. Because before I was like, 50 to 60 kilometers a day is usually good for me. And I'm like, oh, I don't want to push that much. I'm not like pushing for more than 100. And I ended up doing more than 100 kilometers a couple times on the road, and I was just like, oh, I didn't know I had that in me, and so it was really nice to surprise myself, and just feeling just so empowered by just pedaling on my bike and carrying all this stuff with me and being self-reliant and camping or just feeding myself or finding help when I needed to. And I think that's something that you don't really get from, I don't know, sitting at home day to day. You're not necessarily being in those uncomfortable but like really lovely opportunities of learning, right? And I think that's what's needed. And that's, what my parents didn't really see as maybe growth or learning. They just saw it as you're taking a risk, you could die, that's bad. And I wanted to prove them wrong. And I wanted to prove to myself that this is something I could set my mind to and do it.
Yeah. And so with that sort of healing approach, did you really enjoy those long stretches of solo riding where you can just kind of sit
Absolutely.
in and just sort of be with your thoughts?
I love that. I think some
Yeah.
people hate it, and some people are like, oh, yeah, I have headphones on. I'm listening to music.
Yeah.
I have no headphones on. I am just so focused in on riding, listening to the waves or the trees rustling. I love it. I love being with my thoughts.
Yeah. And when you're riding solo, like there's no better time to sort of work something out because you're on the bike for 6, 7, 8 hours a day. Like you got no place to go. Like just sit there and be with it, right?
Absolutely. And I
Ah,
don't know about you, but like I'm, there with my thoughts and sometimes I'm just emotional. I start like I remember once I'm just like crying out of nowhere. I'm like, what's happening? And you're just emotional. You're going up a hill and you just have all these thoughts and when you get up that hill, and then you're going downhill, it's just I don't know, it's just a lovely feeling of being able to have like accomplished that obstacle.
100%. And when you got down to San Diego to your endpoint, were you ready to be done? Were you emotional? Were you wanting more? Take me through that experience.
I was, I think, wanting more and
Yeah.
and it's surprising, because it's such a long period of time. And so I'm going to back up a little bit. Before I hit San Diego, I was in LA for a little bit longer because a friend of mine had come down and visit me. So I took about a week off just to explore and go to the national parks and stuff. And I really missed my bike. There was something about just taking that short little break. And I was like, okay, I think I'm done now. I think I'm ready to go back on my bike. And I didn't really have that much more to go. And I knew like the end was coming near, and I already had a flight booked. So I knew that was coming. And, I wanted it to continue going, but at the same time, I think endings are a good reminder. It's like a good time to also reflect because I think there needs to be an end to certain things. And I think it was just a good time to reflect on how grateful I was for the opportunity, for the people that I've met, and just all this learning that I was doing all along the way. So it's funny because like before I even got to San Diego, there were people cheering, or like there was like somebody who was like, "Oh my God, you're basically there. You're there already." I'm like, "But I'm not really there yet." But thank you. So there was all this like pre-celebration before I even got to San Diego. And once I got to San Diego, there wasn't anybody really there who knew what I had done. So it was like I had all this pre-celebration from like a Warm Showers host and people that I met along the way. But once I got into San Diego, it's like, oh, this is a little anticlimactic, but I loved it anyway.
You're like, oh, well, I guess I'm here now. Okay, great.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I've done some long tours as well. And when you first start out, there's the anticipation, the excitement, and then it sort of just becomes like your life, right? It's not a weekend trip, it's not a 2 week trip. Like you're out for, you say 2.5 months?
Yeah.
And so it just becomes your life. Like today I'm just going to ride my bike, and then tomorrow I'm going to ride my bike. But even though you have this sort of endpoint out there in the future, like it never really seems tangible. But then as you start getting closer and closer to your destination, it's like, slow down. I'm not ready for this to be over with yet.
Hmm. Yeah, I really relate to that. Like in the beginning, I didn't even know how I was going to, I couldn't even imagine how I was going to do this for the next 2.5 months. The first couple of days are really, I think, tough, and you're really working and just trying to navigate how this feels and figure out your routine. But then after that, it just feels so natural. So
yeah. I've asked this question to other guests from time to time, and I want to ask it to you too. So with any trip of this duration, of this distance, things inevitably do go wrong. Did you ever have a moment where you're like, how am I going to get out of this one?
uh,
And you might not have. Things may have been smooth. Who knows?
I mean, I think so. You won't believe this, but I only had one flat the entire time.
Nope, don't believe it.
And it's I don't know how I did that. And the one time I did get my flat, I was biking with a friend that I had met, and so I was really lucky. And so I think that was a moment where they were like, well, I could leave you and you could do your own thing, or I could be here for moral support. And so I usually am a person who's like, no, I can do everything myself. I don't need any help. But I think at that moment, something shifted. And I was like, going back to like this kind of the whole self-doubt and just changing who I am. I was like, okay, no, I think I need help and moral support right now. And I think I can get through this. This is my first flat. And I think I'm quite capable of changing this flat. And I made it through. And people stopped on the side of the road and just checked in on me to see if I was okay too. And so I think, that moment was like not the most terrible moment, but it was a moment where I wasn't sure what I was going to do. But I felt like so seen and just so, people were there to support me. And it just felt very comforting. So I know I didn't exactly answer. It wasn't like the worst thing, but
no.
It was definitely a moment where, yeah, I was kind of like not unsure and then just tried something different and it ended up going, yes, pretty smooth.
No, that's terrific. And I love the fact that you said that you felt seen, that people stopped and checked on you and you felt supported. And I think that's great. There's this, obviously, we talked about this culture of cycling where people want to be supportive, and you had someone with you to help you as well. And you worked your way through it, and that's awesome. Had you done any kind of practice bicycle maintenance before you took off on this trip?
A
Basic
little
stuff?
bit. Like I've changed I've changed flats before, and I've used to volunteer at a bike co-op a little bit. So like I knew my way around a bike. So I had to like remind myself that, because sometimes when you're in the moment and you're just like, I don't know, I'm in shock. I'm like at the side of a highway, like there's cars going super fast. I need to get going. And so sometimes you're just in that shock that you don't realize you have the skills to actually, solve the situation. And it takes it took me a bit of a pause to kind of just stop and reflect, like, you know how to do this and you can do this. And I did. So yeah, it was a lovely moment.
Front tire or back?
Back.
Ah.
Yeah.
Did you have
Yeah.
to
So
do you have to
offloading.
take apart your bike and take the rack or the panniers off or something?
I think I just took my panniers off.
Okay.
So that was fun. And it was nice having an extra person there to like hold stuff or to just like, yeah, it was not as difficult as it would have been maybe had it been just like all on my own. But yeah, it was a nice moment to have help.
If that was the most challenging that happened to you, then that is a pretty good trip. One flat tire is amazing.
I know. I met a lot of people who had like 13 and I was just in disbelief. Like I could not, I was like, are we riding on the same road? Yeah.
Maybe they picked up all the broken glass and tacks on their wheels and there was nothing left on the road for you.
I saw a lot of broken glass on the road all the time. And in my head, I was like, I'm going to get a flat soon. I'm going to get a flat. And I just never got it until, that one day. And so I don't know what happened.
And at least it wasn't raining, right?
Yes, it wasn't raining. Thankfully, not raining.
So I want to go back to your application because I love the statement that you wrote, and I'm gonna quote you here.
Sure.
So you wrote that cycling is a symbolic reminder of independence, resilience, balance, and empowerment. Go more in detail with that. What does this mean
Yeah.
to you?
I think, that actually stems from a quote I had heard from like an American civil rights activist, actually. I think her name is Susan B. Anthony.
Hmm.
And she talked about just the symbolism of the bicycle for womanhood and independence and self-reliance. And I can't remember the quote like specifically, but I just resonated with it so much because the bicycle was exactly that for me. And I think as a woman and a woman of color, when you're cycling on a road on your own, you can feel like you don't deserve to be there.
Hmm.
And I think a part of the healing journey is also feeling like I deserve to be here in this space. Like I want to do this and I want to go out here and do this and I want to feel safe and feel like I belong here. And so, yeah, that's what the bicycle means to me. It's just like a way of life almost. It's a great metaphor for like the balance and the rhythm that I want in my life. And I think being able to physically and mentally, I guess, go through that whole tour is something that just aligns with how I want to live.
I'm wearing a long sleeve sweatshirt right now, but if I wasn't, you would see the goosebumps on my arm. I love
Oh,
what you just said there. So
no.
that is fantastic. And I couldn't agree more. So looking back on this trip, how has this ride changed you? And I don't know, what are some of the lessons that you're going to carry forward into your next adventure?
I think for me, it's really inspired me to think about like how to create spaces for people of color, for just marginalized communities who might not feel seen. And, for me, I was talking about a family who's not really supportive of this kind of lifestyle or adventure. And I kind of wonder like how many other kids are kind of feeling that or not having access to, bicycling or they don't know how to get started. And so I've been just really thinking about how to do that in, the city that I live in. I know that there are some pretty cool initiatives that I've been seeing, like just taking people on like introduction, kind of like touring rides around. And so it'd be really lovely to be able to do that. And so, yeah, there's some ideas that I have going in my head right now of how I'm going to make that happen.
So with that, I'm going to keep going along that same mindset is what would some advice you give to other women or especially women of color who might be hesitant about getting out on a solo cycling adventure?
I mean, I think the first thing is just doing your research and being confident with like the knowledge that you're gaining and then going out there and just volunteering at a bike shop or trying to get to know your bike more intimately, if that makes sense, right? Yeah. Because I think for me personally, the big thing was like, do I have enough knowledge and skill sets to, navigate through some of the challenges I'll have, bicycling? And I think when you know your bike and when you understand the route that you're going on, I think it just gives you that much more confidence and understanding that you're able to do those kinds of things. And so I think that's the advice I would get, is just do your research and really just try to get some experience, and I think you just have to go do it. It's easier said than done, but you just have to take that leap forward, and it's a bit messy, but you're going to do a lot of learning.
It's a bit messy. I like that. Kat, I want to thank you so much for coming on today, talking to me, sharing your stories of inspiration. How can our listeners connect with you or learn more about what you're up to?
Yeah, you can follow me on Instagram. It's at Cat Hippocampus on Instagram. So you can follow me there and my other travel adventures. Awesome.
And we'll have a link to that in our show notes, so for everyone to click on and follow along.
Sounds good.
I want to thank everyone for listening to my conversation today with Kat Lau. If you enjoy our show, give us a like, a share on your social channels, or just tell your friends. These stories hopefully will inspire you to set off on your own bicycle adventure and maybe make the world feel a little bit smaller, one pedal stroke at a time. My name is Jerry Kopak, and until next time, keep riding.
Thank you for joining us, and we hope you enjoyed the show as much as we enjoyed making it. Wherever you are listening, please leave us a rating and a review, as it helps us reach more cyclists and hosts around the world. Visit us at Warmshowers.org to become a part of our community, or on Instagram at Warmshowers_org. If you would like to be a guest on the show or submit a question, please make sure to email us at podcast@warmshowers.org.